On a January afternoon in the middle of the COVID pandemic, I received the devastating news that my fellow filmmaker Benita Raphan had taken her life by suicide. I was the creative advisor on several of Benita's films, and while I may have known the highs and lows of her film career, I now realize I had no idea what was going on behind the scenes. It's only now I understand that almost everything we worked on contained hints of Benita's struggles. And I just didn't see it.
So much like Benita, to want to understand people who are sadly tormented so that they can create. People who struggle with mental illness.
The thing that I do that's the strongest is I'm able to put associations together with images and words and kind of make a mix of things.
It's a style of filmmaking I had never seen before, and I wanted to learn something from it.
She taught me a lot. You can juxtapose the sound and be very effective against a totally weird picture.
I spent a year going through Benita's personal archive, looking for anything that could help me tell her story. Think of this film as an experiment in collaboration. Benita left behind thousands of pieces. My job was to splice them together, to do whatever it takes to bring Benita's creative spirit to life.
I hope you like dogs.
Yeah?
Yes,
good?
I see you. You look great
Okay.
too. It's nice to see a friendly face.
Thanks. Yeah. By the way, two things before we begin.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this, but 2 years ago, I had a cancer problem. And I actually got cancer in the middle of making this film and threw me completely off. I actually had to stop and couldn't touch it for like 8 months. And then I kind of began again in the middle sort of thing. But in any event, that's not why I bring it up, although it might come up because it's part of the story of the making of the film. But I I my salivary glands don't work properly, so I have to drink all the time. Water is medicine for me, so I have two glasses of water. I might even need a refill. I should maybe put 3, but the point is that when I talk, my mouth gets even drier. So I
Okay.
apologize. It's just what it is.
No, you should not apologize.
Okay, well, I just want to explain then, Yeah.
For sure, I'm glad you shared that with me,
Sure.
and I'm sorry that you went through that
Oh, well, thank
and
you.
are going through that.
Thank you. Well, I'm now, I mean, there's still kind of complications and all, but I'm in remission, which, knock on wood, is
Right.
best news of all. So
Yeah.
that's where I am.
How did you how did you find out that this was happening to you?
Sore throat. It was tongue cancer, sore throat that didn't go away, incessant coughing. I had a cough. It was big. It was like a pet, I would tell people I'm not sick. I just cough, as if like that was like a thing.
A rationalization.
It's just one of my little personality tics, or it's just a thing. It's my pet cough. So don't, yeah.
Don't don't be concerned.
And when I went to check it out, I thought it was, acid reflux was going to be the worst diagnosis I would get, but it turned out to be far worse. So
Yeah.
anyway, big ordeal, arduous chemo, radiation.
Oh my
thing.
God,
Yeah,
Alan.
no, big thing. Big. I mean, yeah.
Wow,
Anyway,
yeah,
but
that's terrifying.
anyway, so yeah, thank you. So, but I'm okay, and I got my strength back, strong enough at least to finish the film, and still coping. I get checked every 3 months, and But
Yeah, you do that till, and then it gets to every 6 months or a year,
I
and
hope,
then,
yeah, I
right?
hope it
I
gets,
mean,
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sort of asking, but
yeah, yeah.
I've
No,
heard this.
that's the sort of the plan. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right now, I live in quarterly. I live my life in quarterly bouts of trepidation.
yeah.
That's just what it is.
Are you sharing that information?
Yeah, yeah, I have no problem. Yeah. I mean, because the thing is, and by the way, just as a kind of caveat or framing for our thought
Yeah.
for our conversation, this is going to the first. I'm showing the film at DOC NYC in 2 weeks. It'll be
Yeah.
the
No.
first public screening of the film.
Yeah.
So
It's
I
your world
haven't.
premiere.
Yeah, I don't have my shtick down. I
Right.
don't. You're talking to someone who's still sort of the
I
cave
love
dweller.
this. This
What's
could be like if I had
that?
only been more thoughtful and multi-dimensional thinker years ago, I would have thought this is the way to do a podcast. Be the first
Yeah,
while the artist, the storyteller, the filmmaker is finding their language. Because I literally, I just had a conversation with Lynn Sachs, who I'm sure you know,
of course, of course.
and she said the exact same thing to me. She just made a film called Every Contact Leaves a Trace. Maybe you know about it.
I haven't seen it, but I know of it. Yeah.
It's a beautiful story. It's beautiful. And essay film, of course. And then
Yeah.
she's going to be premiering that. Her premieres at IDFA.
Right.
Also, it's coming up imminently. So, but it's we had the same thing as she's
Yeah.
finding the way to talk about the film, and what a a great thing to be able
Right.
to create a platform for that, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's I know from experience that, you know, I don't. In other words, there are a lot of deep things about the film that I
Right.
intuitively understand, and that are part of that are in my nervous system, in the back of my head. But finishing a film, onlining, mixing, I've been dealing with it in its physiology, if you will, recently, just to get all these things, to get the final version done. I mean, the bigger point is that I haven't had a lot of experience yet thinking in real time, thinking out loud about the film, being able to articulate things, haven't been asked. I mean, I ask myself questions all the time, and I think about it all the time. But I know from experience that if we were to do this 6 months from now, when I've taken the film around the block a little bit, um, I'll even know how to answer some of your questions, which I
Yeah. Well,
probably,
go
yeah,
ahead. I kind of look, but I look at it as a in a way, from my perspective, it's a gift because you
right,
know, um, you know, it's a double-edged sword in a way. On one hand, you haven't figured out that language and you haven't processed it to the degree that part of the experience of making a film, which is like formulating a way of communicating the film verbally, right, and
yeah,
otherwise. And then, but on the other hand, it's your raw,
absolutely.
unfiltered
It's
Alan
it's a
Berliner.
it's a raw state.
Yeah,
I guess I didn't finish the metaphor or the analogy is that you're talking to the cave dweller that made the film,
right.
not the city dweller,
Yeah,
who's carrying it around in my
yeah,
knapsack, to the theater.
yeah.
And what's interesting is I would hope and even imagine that to the extent I remember something, there'll be something that I'll say here today with you that I'll use in the Q&A,
Right.
because it'll be
Yeah.
like, wow, okay, that's a good way to answer that question, or I never thought that before. That's those kind of things. It's fun. It's fun.
Yeah. I mean, also, what Joshua Oppenheimer,
Hmm.
is that filmmaker. He comes to mind because he's so intelligent and so articulate. But I found it frustrating, and I think it was Susan Norgate who was publicizing the first film, which
Yeah.
I wasn't prepared to talk about this, but it's not like I can always pull from my memory, but
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and on Indonesia, the whole he made a couple of
Yeah.
films,
Yeah.
and I found it like I just had this experience or opportunity rather of talking to this such an incredible artist and storyteller, yet I was a little bit frustrated on some level because he had developed such a language for how to talk about that I felt that it impeded us like the spontaneity,
Right.
so in a way I'm grateful from my perspective, but that doesn't
Right.
necessarily promote the film as well as you would want necessarily. I think we'll still do it.
Right.
I have confidence that we can do that. But it's an interesting dilemma, if you want to use that word, because it works better for me because I don't get that slickly
Right. Right.
developed language, but
Right.
for you, I don't know.
Yeah.
you know,
Well, I mean,
you know,
it's part of the process. It's part of the journey.
right?
So it's
Yeah.
all,
So I hope
you
you
know,
do.
yeah. So all I'm saying is it's like, there's the other side of it, where it's not that it becomes rote, you know. I know the answers that work well for me that would ostensibly, I mean, listen, it's always good to be asked questions that you'd never heard before and to
Right.
think things that you've never thought before and be able to articulate things that you've never said before and all that, so that's valuable because the best thing in some cases that an interview can do is make you the maker, and
Right.
speaking from my perspective, think of things I've never understand the film in a different way or understand things
Right.
or force me to articulate things about the film that I never have yet. But in this
Right.
case, ever.
So what was the budget? I'm kidding, of course.
Right, right, right.
But
Yeah,
but that's great. Yeah, and it is the responsibility, even though I don't think this is so commonly, it's not practically used, but for or this is not a typical thing. One encounters probably from your end, but like it is in a way up to the interviewer to kind of figure out a way of navigating, like how do you pull stuff up, but it's hard, to do that. It's not because you don't want to sound like you're straining for original questions, like you know if they come up, that's great.
right.
Sometimes it is organic or natural just to talk about have the questions because it's like for the people who are watching or listening, they
Sure.
do want to know basic things like how did
Right,
you meet Benita Raphan? How did you
right, right.
come to decide to make this a film about her? Which is does lead into where I wanted to go because I know your films and they've all been mostly pretty personal
Yeah, yeah,
about you. They've been mostly about you, your
right.
insomnia, your
Yeah,
dad,
yeah,
your
yeah, of course.
grandparents,
Absolutely.
but your first cousin once removed.
Yeah.
And so, but this one is not. It's a
Well,
very different film on a certain level, anyway, at least on the surface.
right, right. I just I'll get to that in a second, but I just want to say you're not in a position now to say things that I've heard from interviewers over the decades, which is, I know you've been asked this question a million times, but I still have to ask it. Or I know you've been asked this
Yeah,
question a million times, so I'm not gonna ask, I'm gonna ask something different. I'm gonna ask it in a different way. We're like we're at
yeah,
we're at the bottom of the ladder here, so to speak. But it's all
yeah. We're at the
yeah,
starting
yeah.
line.
Yeah. Well, listen, in terms of I like to think that it's still a kind of personal film. Um, in many ways it's self-reflexive. It's about making the film. It's about finding Benita. You know, I think my voiceover uh, has both my personality in it, my storytelling character in it I'm in it as a storytelling character, um, and also I mean stylistically, if you will, it has a lot of things, a lot of grammatical elements, we'll call them, that I use in other films, like the bells and the whistles,
Yeah, yeah,
and the language that I sort of at this point sort of tell stories with, the vernacular, the lexicon, better word, that I use to tell stories. So it always felt like a personal story to me. But of course, um, I suppose the big difference um, is that this is the fourth portrait I've made. I made a portrait of we'll call them portraits, a portrait of my grandfather, my father, and my cousin Edwin. Yeah. And they're all family members, right? So there's an implicit assumption in viewing the film that when you make a film about a family member or write a book, a biography, what have you, of a family member, that anything that you learn, in other words, there's an implicit well, it's an assumption that a viewer would have that anything that he learns about his family or from his father or from his grandfather, he's learning about himself, right? There's a kind of projection towards that mirroring, whether it's genetic,
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
genealogical, or cultural, familial, family, this, or, that's part of the deal. That's part of this film doesn't have that, because she's not my family, right? So I go into it with in a different mindset, but it doesn't mean that there aren't things about her and her life, her work and her death that I don't learn from or I can't learn from, because Benita and I did have things in common.
Hmm. Hmm.
We were, well, I mean, I don't know how far you want me to go down that rabbit hole there, but
Well, I'm interested
yeah,
in, well, that does, that's a way of explaining how it's personal, of course, because you didn't select just anybody. You didn't arbitrarily choose to make a biographical, portrait of just anybody. It
no,
was somebody very specific who seemed to maybe trigger something in you that maybe was very personal.
right. Well, the first thing is that her family contacted me. I didn't go to them. They came
And
to
that's
me.
different too, right?
Well, I mean, it doesn't matter how it ha and I'll tell you the story. It's a simple backstory, but just to frame it, however it came to be, every film that I've ever made, whether it's a portrait or otherwise, always begins with a sort of a vague idea. We'll call it even a hunch, that there's something here for me. I
Hmm.
don't know what it's going to be like. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what I'm going to discover. I don't know what the archive of this person's life that I have access to will when I investigate it and explore it, what it will yield, what surprises there will be.
Right.
I'm not someone, I don't make treatments, I don't want to know everything before I start, hardly. So
Yeah.
there's always that level of every film that I make is kind of it's like a leap of faith. Okay. But just to go back, Benita's family came to me. They knew that I had been a kind of, if you will, a creative advisor to Benita, a mentor, if you will. She thought of me as a mentor. And they came to me and they asked me if I would, excuse me,
Hmm. Hmm.
they asked me if I would be willing to finish the film that she'd been working on when she died. And it didn't take me long to realize that as much as that was an interesting notion, it's not what I do, and no one could. That's too true to Benita's essence. I couldn't really approach that. Um, and a lot of just even what Benita was involved. This was a film about canine cognition, about dog, what it's
Oh,
like to be a dog. And so I said I politely begged off of that, but my wife Shari was a high school friend of Benita, so she knew
okay.
her, though they hadn't seen each other since high school or been in touch. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry because I'm interrupting, which is so
Okay.
unprofessional.
It's okay. I
But
don't.
I have to share with you something that's kind of going to blow your mind.
Go ahead. I'm ready.
Another friend of Benita's, who's in the film, is my friend, one of my old friends, Miriam Kuznets.
No kidding. Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
How do you know her from back in high school? No.
M- n- no, even maybe earlier because we both attended the same summer camp in Ulster County
No
in the
kidding.
70s,
Wow.
and kind of had a big crush on her.
No kidding. Wow.
She was older by a year,
I
which is
see.
all the difference in the world when you're in summer camp. But
Sure.
we were hanging out
Right.
one
No
summer, and
kidding.
this thing was the summer of 75 or six.
Wow.
Gonna say
Wow.
anyway.
Wow.
We've been in touch because I would go to Austin
Mhm.
regularly for South by
Mhm.
Southwest, and I ran,
Good. Good.
and her husband was also, from the same summer camp. That's how they met, I
Wow.
believe. So I have that connection. I was kind of surprised. I think she made a comment onto the announcement that the film, which is called Benita, is going to be
Yeah,
at have its world premiere at DOC NYC, and I didn't realize she was also in the film till I watched it,
right.
and then I'm like, oh, well, I think Alan will probably be surprised to hear this. That
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a good one. She's coming to New York for the premiere.
well, that's fantastic, and I'm just it's amazing. She's a great
Right.
person.
And just to tie this together a little bit,
Please.
even further, or make another little put a stitch a little tighter. Um, Miriam was the girlfriend of Gregory Crutzen, photographer,
Yes. Well, I
who was
know
in the, who
Gregory
was in
too.
the, who was in the Speedies.
Yeah, no, I know Greg.
Okay.
We've been in touch because he has a place up here too, Gregory. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I've been running into him on occasion.
Right.
We have but so yeah, we were all at the same summer camp, which is called Camp Thoreau, and
Ah,
it was in Wallkill, New York, near New Paltz. But I digress.
yeah. So where was I?
Oh, that's the
Oh yeah.
problem.
So anyway, no. So I talked to Shari about it, and
Sherry.
and I just proposed the notion, the idea that I can't finish Benita's film, but maybe I can make a portrait of her, make a film about her. And her family, this was a time when there's a lot of grief, a lot of pain. Um, they got back to me slowly and tentatively, but eventually they agreed, you know. So
Did they watch like other films
I
too?
assume that I know they saw Nobody's Business because they asked me some questions about it. I don't know what else they saw.
It's a good one to start with. Yeah.
Okay. But I think that from their perspective, um, although I didn't know anything about them, I think from their perspective, they knew that Benita trusted me and had a very strong, felt a strong connection to me. And I think that was the impetus, if you will, for their uh, permission, And, listen, they gave me, I want to say everything. Maybe they withheld things, but everything you see in the film is what they gave me, you
Yeah.
know?
So let's now take a kind of a step back in a sense, and then just
Sure.
update people on what we're talking about because already I would, if I was watching, I'd be completely like
Right. Okay.
100% in, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But Benita was, as you said, you were kind of a mentor of hers. Is it fair to say,
Yeah. Yeah.
for lack
Benita
of it?
was, I mean, I'll talk just objectively for a second. Benita was she liked to think of herself as a kind of an experimental documentary filmmaker, experimental biographer. Um, She made mostly portraits of other people. Um, in a way, I understand now that I didn't quite understand then, that most of the people she made portraits of had to, well, everyone does, but were pioneers or innovators, famous
Hmm.
people, whether it's Emily Dickinson, the poet, or Buckminster Fuller, um, or Helen Keller, or John Nash, were people who overcame obstacles, you know, emotional, psychological obstacles to um, to make their work,
Hmm.
to flourish, to thrive. And so that was a particular theme of hers, you know. And she has a strong background in graphic design, a very sophisticated visual sensibility, and it's there in all of her films. And you know, by way of metaphor and a kind of um, a style of filmmaking that in which her imagery is um, amorphous and abstract and melds into one another, and it knows what it's doing way
Hmm.
before you do, and there's a beauty to it. There's a beauty to it. She had a very, very, as I say, a keen visual sensibility and a rather refined aesthetic sense, you know. Anyway, so in the handling of these delicate subjects, so to speak. So, that was another thing. I didn't, it doesn't happen for all artists, let alone filmmakers, that people are able to assess their work even while they're alive. Like, what's the thread that ties through? We just know she made a film about John Nash, and she made a film about Helen Keller, and she made a film about Buckminster Fuller. Oh, she likes making films about innovators. But the sections of the film that I chose to use, and the reasons I use those films are because they feed they feed an understanding that I gleaned, that I discovered, um, in that she's making films that mirror parts of herself, you know,
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
are projections of herself. And of course, um, the first year of the film, I didn't edit anything. All I did was I was given piles of notebooks, piles of journals, boxes and manila folders of photographs and just the raw stuff. But I was also given 40 hard drives. Okay, that's a lot. And
It's a lot.
yeah, well, I mean, here's the
Yeah.
thing. The reason that it's a lot is that um, Benita was a dog lover. I'm just complex person, as complex as anyone, and maybe more so. She was a dog lover, and she would take her dog on walks all the time. But she's also a visual artist, so she would use her cell phone to take photographs, use her cell phone to take little videos, QuickTime videos all over the city, in the parks and whatever, and anywhere. Now, when you use your cell phone to take things, the cell phone just gives the file a number, IMG 4732. Then the next photo you take is IMG 4733, and on and on. And unless you go in to your cell phone um, carefully, copiously, and
Label.
regulate, you don't regulate, there just remain numbers. So I can just tell you that there were many, 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 many countless folders of thousands of photographs that just had numbers. And QuickTimes too, just had numbers.
Yeah.
The point is, you don't know what's in them unless and until you look. Okay.
Right.
And so I use the expression suffer the patience. I had to suffer the patience to do that because I don't know. I can't make a film until I really I've truly excavated the archaeological site, so to speak. And, sometimes, you could you might not find something of interest for 7 hours in the day, but before you call it quits, before the day's over, you find an image, a photograph, or a series of photographs that are just like, wow, that's valuable. That's important. But I also found one day going through and sometimes even the folders weren't even labeled. But I found one day a quick time in which Benita is recording herself off of her computer, the way I'm looking at a computer now, basically, um, in which she um, says that the film that she had been working on, which her family assumed was the film she was working on, about which Benita used to call canine cognition, or Benita would frame it, would just describe what it's like to be a dog, which we're talking now in the middle of COVID, and she was having trouble getting good quality interviews. She couldn't shoot. I mean, COVID created problems for everyone, whatever you did and whatever you were doing. And so that was frustrating to her. You have, the added isolation and loneliness, but the frustrations of being a filmmaker, of making that film anyway, were weighing heavily upon her. And suddenly she's saying, for which she had gotten a Guggenheim Fellowship. Okay. And I just say that because the Guggenheim Fellowship, which was an incredibly welcome affirmation for her and her work, and also with some money to make her work, was also pressure. Okay. Because it has that imprimatur of Guggenheim. It's like, so she was feeling the weight of, I can't make the film. They're waiting for me to finish the film, all that kind of stuff. And so she said, I'm going to change the idea and not make the canine cognition film, but I'm going to make a film. And then what did she say? I'm paraphrasing. I'm going to make a film. Instead, I'm going to make a film about how COVID is impacting people with mental health issues. Okay? That's what she said. And it's like, oh, wow. I mean, that was like, I couldn't believe She didn't tell me.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
so that changes everything.
Yeah.
Okay? That changes everything because it's now, in effect, she's planning, thinking about making a film, a personal film, in effect, if you'll excuse the expression, coming out of the closet as someone with quote unquote mental health issues. And she even says at the end of that little part, she says, I'll use my what she said, I can't remember I'll use myself, I'll take images or photographs with my cell phone and make a story out of it. Meanwhile, she'd been using her cell phone for years with her dogs and and photographing the city. And all the while, by the way, and I use a lot of it towards the end of the film, she'd been filming New York City during COVID.
Hmm.
So she had already been subconsciously, if you will, preparing for that,
Right.
or maybe even consciously preparing for that. I don't know. But
Right.
that changed everything. That meant that, it meant that the film the family had asked me originally to finish for her on her behalf wasn't in play anymore, but there was another film that was in play that was directly and profoundly um, connected to the tragedy, the shock of her death, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so then I realized, ironically, that the film then had a kind of pervasive and intrinsic irony. I am finishing the film that she was making. It's just not the one that I thought or her family thought was on the table. And I'd like to think to some extent, I finished both of them. I mean, there's enough dog stuff in the film
That's true.
to contribute to that, to at least to convey Benita's love of dogs, you know.
Right.
And there's a
Yeah.
time where she says, "Can human beings love dogs?" I mean, there's enough dog stuff in the film, and I don't say that in a slip way, but I'm just saying
You haven't, I know you haven't developed language for the
yeah, yeah,
dogs yet,
yeah,
Alan.
yeah, yeah,
That'll
yeah, there you
come.
go,
It'll
there you
come.
go, there you go.
Yeah.
Um, but you know, I felt that I then had a light, a guiding principle to tell Benita's story in light of her mental health issues, which all I can say, I say it in the film, and I'll say it to anyone who I speak with. To know Benita was to know that she had a kind of fragility, she had a kind of vulnerability, um, that's just came with her. But I stayed in my lane. I never asked. I never yeah,
Diagnosed.
exactly. That's just Benita. In fact, her name became a kind of, it's a unique name, right? I never met another, but it became, which allowed it to become a kind of adjective. That's just Benita. I just thought to
Yeah.
myself, that's Benita. There also, listen, we all have peculiarities. She had a set of them,
Mhm.
as much as anyone. But the point was, I then realized that at the outset of the film, um, I was dealing here with the Benita I knew, okay, and then the Benita I never knew existed, you know?
And there's, in a way, as I'm thinking, as you're talking about it, the personal documentary, the Alan Berliner documentary, because you're the only one other than Bonita who laid eyes on so much of that, all those, images. You're the one that looked at them and discovered things. Nobody else.
Nobody else, nobody else. Oh, listen, the truth is, Adam, that if I didn't use that verb, I'll use the expression again. If I didn't suffer the patience to spend a year and go through all those, I literally read everything she ever wrote. Okay.
Wow.
I literally went through every file in 40 hard drives. Okay. Listen, Benita was obsessive. She got an obsessive, if you'll excuse the expression, biographer. Whatever,
Right.
by the way, and I used to complain about my grandfather saved every letter he ever wrote, every letter he ever received, saved every piece of paper, every check he ever wrote. I mean, my grandfather was an obsessive too. Well, there you go. I'm the grandson. I probably inherited a little bit of that.
Hmm.
But the point is that if I didn't find that particular QuickTime file, no one would have any idea. It would have
Right.
been, and yeah, you know, and of course, that helped me uh, both structure the story, frame the concept, and inform the selections that I made. And um, yeah. So that was and gave me the inspiration. Remember, I was, I listen, I'm also, for lack of a better expression, an experimental documentary filmmaker. I don't do conventional documentary films. So I had that in common with Benita. I think that was one of the reasons that she wanted to work with me and respected the advice that I could offer. Um, you know, Benita was an artist, you know, I know that language too. And so I had a lot of things in common. We had a lot of things in common. She shared with me, her disappointments. She shared with me her celebrations. She shared with me things, along
Hmm.
the way.
Hmm.
So I was, I wasn't her best friend, you know. But what's also interesting? I talked to this woman, Lucy, in the film, Lucy Eldridge, who was her best
Right.
friend. Benita barely shared anything about her filmmaking with Lucy, you know. Maybe so. Benita had a kind of compartmentalized life. We all do.
Sure.
Many of us do
Right.
more than others, of course. So, you know, um, um, I didn't know about Benita's illustrious. I didn't know very much about Benita's I'll call it illustrious in quotation marks. Um, Life as a graphic artist and as an art director, and when she worked in Paris for all these fancy fashion houses and stuff. I didn't know about that. A lot of things I didn't know. But in any event, and even in the height of that, when she was at her glory, in her 20s and early 30s, she's still in Paris. She writes depressed in Paris, you know.
Mm. Yeah.
Family probably no, her family didn't know that either, for instance.
Mm.
Alan pauses. Adam asks another question.
Well, I just want to tell people that, as we mentioned before, Benita, which is spelled Benita,
Right?
is having its world premiere at DOC NYC. You'll be at both of the screenings, I assume,
Well,
doing
yeah.
Q&As on Friday, the 14th at 7 at the IFC Center. And then on Sunday, the 16th at 11:30 a.m. at Village East. So there'll be two.
Angelica. Yeah.
Yeah. And I assume that
Am I
more
allowed to
festivals
also?
are.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I was just going to say, I'm sure there are going to be more festivals to come, no doubt. And
Yeah. There's also going to be is the film's can I can the film's going to have a week-long run at the Firehouse Cinema.
oh, well, oh, that's huge. So that must be also coming right up then.
Yeah, November 28th through December 4th.
Wait a minute. December, what day?
I'm sorry, November
No,
28th through December 4th.
that's that is great. At the DUC TV at the Firehouse Cinema. So, New Yorkers will have no excuse not to a qualifying theatrical for Benita and plans to play in LA eventually. I assume you're working on, maybe you guys are working on that or,
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
we have these theaters up here called Upstate Films.
I've shown my films here.
Okay. Just
Yeah.
putting that little piece,
Yeah.
like reminding you that, and it's just very close to where I am. And because I work at some radio station up here and they advertise with us, we do some partner stuff. I could interview, filmmakers that are,
Right.
and also Time and Space Limited, this great venue up in Hudson, New York, would be a great place to eventually screen it. So I'm going to help. We could talk offline about that
Sure.
because
I showed.
it because we've run into each other
Yeah.
upstate.
Yeah. Well, at Woodstock we ran, and
Yeah.
also I showed this earlier, the most recent film, Letter to the Editor, at the Columbia Film Festival.
Oh, Film Columbia.
Film
Up
Columbia.
in Chatham, New
Up in
York.
Chatham, New York. Yeah. That
Right.
was a couple years
Right.
ago. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I missed that, but I do remember it's the New York Times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your one of your examples of obsessive compulsive
Yeah.
behavior
Yeah. Yeah.
of
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
of your um. Well, it feels like on some level a nice place to stop, but if you feel like because we did say we're developing a language here for your if there's anything, it is not a spoiler to mention that um, Benita decided to end her life. There's a conversation that maybe we could have some other time around that. And, it's a choice people make. Sometimes they're not in what we think of as the right state of mind. Um, but it's a complicated and a conversation worthy of nuance
Yeah.
about, that decision for some people, um, but it is not something that you're leaving out. It would be in a way, right? Wouldn't it be kind of tacky to like leave that out? Because then,
Of the film or of our
yeah,
conversation?
well, no, I'm sorry. Good question. Of the promotion of the film.
Oh, yeah.
And
No, I
how
mean,
you like that would
yeah,
be so wrong not to
right.
try to mislead or leave that out to like that's not something one does. That's
I
really
think I say that she took her life by suicide within the first minute of the film,
yeah,
first
right,
minute and a half of the film.
exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's there,
And all the footage, like you said already, is that's here. This is a film that you collaborated with Benita to
I,
make.
I like to think so. I mean,
I think
that's how I
well,
imagined it. You can't spend a year reading every word that someone's written,
yeah.
looking at every film, every outtake, every photograph. I mean, I literally absorbed her life. It's a very intense. You can't do something like that um, without without well, see, I can't get the next part of the
Hmm.
sentence, but change. When you do something like that, there becomes a very deep transcendence, a connection with the subject.
Hmm.
It's impossible, you know? And so at a certain point, um, and I think this is true even for biographers, when you really immerse in the elements in the elements of a person's life, letters, journals, and Benita was a filmmaker. She didn't leave I'm just going to digress for a second. She might not have left a suicide note behind, but she did leave a trail, a filmmaker's
Hmm.
trail. And she
Right.
left some things that helped me both explain her decision to take her life, but also help me visualize it, at the end of the film, which is very surprising. She took some images, well, it's near the end of the film. She took some images that they're not pretty, they're dark, you know.
Hmm.
But in any event, that kind of you form a transcendent relationship with them, and it's happened with my grandfather, who's no longer alive, and to some extent with Edwin, who wasn't.
Koenig, the
But
poet.
yeah, yeah, my father's different because I was talking to him in real time. It's a little different. And my father's film wasn't so much about an archive, although I had access to all of his pictures and so forth. But the point is, so Benita's, in that transcendence, there's a connection with her spirit. Something
Hmm.
happens, you know, and and in that becomes a ground, the grounds um, of the fertile ground for a kind of collaborative dynamic. It's a little hard to explain because it's mysterious, but for me it was very both palpable and compelling. And I also in the film, if we're ending, I don't mean to go down a whole thing, but in the film, in the way that I decided to tell the story by using elements from her journals and notebooks and so forth, um, it allowed me to um, use some of her words in which she talks to me, the maker. Some of her words, they talk
Hmm.
to me. And in some cases, they don't talk to me, they talk to the viewer, So I give her agency. There are certain spots around the film where I give her a chance to speak, as it were, to convey,
Hmm.
to express herself. And, that's part of the collaborative dynamic as well.
Well, it's such a I don't want to sound like I don't know. like exaggerating, or these aren't platitudes when I say that it's such an honor and gift to be able to kind of explore this with you, like
Well,
today.
listen,
And
thanks.
it's really just
Thank you.
great, and it's just and to be in touch still, and
Yeah.
um because I've always enjoyed our interactions and our but and the opportunity to see your body of work, and it's a great journey.
Honestly, I enjoyed it as well.
That's great. Thank you. And
You.
I hope you and Benita's family, that these are really meaningful screenings. And
Well, they haven't seen the film,
yeah, wow.
so that'll
They're
be
New
interesting.
Yorkers, right? So
Yeah.
this
Well,
is it.
listen, they gave me the stuff, and
Right.
listen, it's not even about liking the film or not liking the film, you know. Um, of course, seeing the film is going to unlock and generate all sorts of complicated responses. I mean, it's their daughter. She took her life, and so it's going to take them a while to process it and and appreciate it. But I'll leave you with this thought, and I hope if the film is successful, then I hope what I'm about to say will be both valid and true, which is that when they see the film, I'm hoping that they understand that um, Benita no longer belongs to them. Benita no longer belongs to me. You know, I'd like to think I've given Benita a posthumous legacy, okay, where people who watch the film can see parts of themselves, whether they're dog lovers, whether they're struggling with mental health, whether they're artists who are reckoning with certain issues.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what a portrait is. She's led a complicated life, and excuse me, and I would think that one of the motivations and one of the inspirations for um, or one of their aspirations, I suppose, for contacting me and letting me make the film was that I do that for some version of that for Benita. I don't do hagiography, so I assume they knew that. You know, um, but it was always my intention with every film I make, to produce a portrait that people can see themselves, people can recognize themselves in the story, one way or the other, and to try to be helpful, you know. And
Mm.
anyway, that's what I'm in the end, after all the emotional, the powerful emotions subside. Will I hope that her family will recognize the power of that and the transcendence of that and the hopefully the gift of that, that
Mm.
Benita now belongs to the world, for better or worse. She's now part of a broader conversation.
Yeah.
And that's all I can hope to do, really, you know.
Hmm. Thank you, Alan.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. Thank you,
Yeah.
Aaron.
I'll
Be
see you.
well.
You too.
Thank you.